coming. Welcome to Social Enterprise Association's speaker series. Tonight's going to be all about scaling social innovation. We're happy to welcome Roshan Paul, all the way from Nairobi. Flew here just for us.
Indeed.
Roshan is the founder of the Amani Institute. Previously, he worked at Ashoka for several years. And there he was part of Ashoka's Peace Initiative and Ashoka Globalizer, which you started, right?
Yeah.
Today, Roshan is based in Nairobi, like I said, and he leads the Amani Institute, developing the next generation of talent to address social challenges. Roshan's writing has been published in Forbes, Stanford Social Innovation Review, MIT's Innovation Journal, and India Today. Titles include To Scale Up, Don't Spread Your Organization, Coach the Future Leaders of Your Field, and Scale Equals Partnership. And please welcome Roshan Paul.
Thanks. Thanks for coming, everyone. I thought maybe we'd just love to go around the room and maybe just hear names and what programs you guys are part of, just to have a sense of who's in the room. So just really quickly, just have so.
Hi, I'm Kirna. I graduated with a double major from International Development and Philosophy, and I'm currently interning with the USA Consulting.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Federico de Jesus. I'm a social enterprise master's student in second year. Doing some homework that I'm really looking forward to.
Hi, I'm Tina from the FE program.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Alessandra, and I'm also in the social enterprise program.
Yeah.
And it's my first year, and I'm happy you're here.
Thanks.
I'm TJ, first year student in the regional studies.
Okay. Regional studies? Okay.
I'm Amanda, and I'm a second year at social enterprise studies.
Okay.
I am Avery, and I'm also a second year in the social enterprise program.
Great. Thanks.
And Trey, I'm also a second year social enterprise.
Okay.
I'm Vivian, second year international development.
National development.
I'm Sarah, second year social enterprise.
Nick, second year social enterprise.
Okay.
Sophia, second year international economic relations.
I'm Shreya, working in the social enterprise program.
Yeah.
I'm Tom, second year student.
All right, what?
Emmanuel, my fourth year student at Howard University and a prospective student for social enterprise program.
I'm Patty Long. I'm Christian. I'm a senior nursing major at Howard.
I'm Caitlin's first year social enterprise student. We also have Amy Bellard. She taught a course this weekend called Partnering Across Sectors.
Okay. Remind me to mention our Howard student if I forget. It's a good story.
Michael, first year social enterprise program.
Ryan, second year development management.
Development management. Cool. Thank you. Just good to always get a sense of who's in the room, so we could also, hopefully try and get a bit of a dialogue. And it's nice that there's different programs there. So about 12 years ago, I was a senior in college and walking out of French class, and it was a bright morning in September, and I went over to the cafeteria and saw a bunch of people crowded around a TV screen. And I was at the time, like most foreign students in the US, going to work in consulting or investment banking, things like that. And I, was about to go prepare for a job interview. But it seemed odd to me that people were watching TV at 9:30 in the morning, because I was at a pretty nerdy school. And so I walked over to join them, and that was when the second plane hit the second tower. And at that moment, as we saw the people jumping out of the buildings and seeing them fall and seeing the building collapse, that was for me kind of the moment in which everything changed. And I was, seemed like, or 3 months after 9/11, there was a terrorist attack on the Parliament building in India. So picture a terrorist attack on the capital here. And 3 months after that, very violent sort of ethnic conflict between Hindus and Muslims in Western India. at this point, the U.S. is bombing Afghanistan and starting to talk about bombing Iraq, and I'm graduating, and consulting just doesn't seem to be that important. And so I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew it wasn't going to be in trying to work for a oil company or an insurance company and things like that. And so I went back to India, though stopped in East Africa and worked in a village there for a summer, and sometimes I still feel like I learned more about international development in those 2 months in a village than 12 years after that. But then started working for Ashoka, which I think most of you may know of, and especially those in the social enterprise program, and started our youth program in India, and after that, that was sort of the path that led to a career in social enterprise. Since then, that also saw me work at Ashoka in DC and all around the world as well, which has always been interesting, and also seeing how no matter what country and what culture, social entrepreneurs are a common species almost, and a unique kind of animal, a strange animal. And but whether they're Colombian or Indian or Japanese, it's the same personality. And so that's been a really interesting thing to be part of around the world and see the growth of this field. But in doing all of this and working a lot on, particularly on scaling social innovation and talking to social entrepreneurs around the world, especially those who are running organizations in multiple countries, I felt they were saying something in common that surprised me, because I'm used to people talking about funding and how that's a challenge, and how are we going to survive financially. But what these guys were all saying was, yeah, funding's an issue, but the other one that keeps me up at night is talent. I just can't find people to hire that I like and that I trust, and it's hurting my own growth, and it's hurting also how we can scale up and go to other countries. And so that initially, and I had recently finished grad school and guest lectured at a number of universities, and sort of all of that together, pointed to something that there seemed to be something missing in the higher education infrastructure of preparing people for social change related careers. And so that question of how do you actually train for this kind of work was the one that got us started down this road of starting the Amani Institute. And so let me maybe start with showing you a little video, and then that shares a bit more about the rationale for our work, and then I'll talk a bit about what we do, and possibly something that we're going to try and partner with Bob on, and then talk a bit about how that relates to scale and what I've learned along the way, and then we can have a conversation as well. So. one. Help. No. Yes. Cool. All right. So, as you saw in the video, we're really confronting a world where what employees are looking for seems to be quite different than the past. And I think it's because the nature of work in many ways has shifted. And there seems to be this growing mismatch between employers and people coming into the workforce from a traditional education background. But I think what's really this is about is that, as you saw in the video, more people want to do this kind of work, and at the same time there's not enough of a realization, and those of you who are social entrepreneurs already in the room know that this is hard work. It's complex. Social change takes a lot of time. It's not something that happens overnight or even in a year. And so we don't train for it very well. We need to train for it a lot differently. And so I choose medical school or military academy quite intentionally, because those are both very practical, hands-on types of training, but also showing the intensity of the field in which they train for. And I think we need something similar in social change work. And that's what we essentially are trying to create. And if there's a quote that I think really sums up our philosophy or where we're coming from, it's this one, that the problems, that the challenges that we face today are not ones that are limited typically to a particular city or at least the biggest challenges or country, and they cross boundaries, and so we need to learn how to cross boundaries, but not just geographic ones, all kinds of boundaries actually. And what we're doing is, I think, quite similar, and as Bob and I were talking earlier, realized how close our values are in terms of education, in terms of what you guys, especially in the social enterprise program, are trying to do here. Very practical, experience-oriented, experiential, but building also professional skills, things that you can take to an organization day one and say, I can do this, and that's what people are looking for. But also the importance of the person, the individual who's doing the work. You were joking earlier about did I copy this from you? But actually, it's a lot of people like yourself who've worked for a long time in the social change sector. So talk to Nobel laureates, to people who've running departments at the UN and places like that. And it was surprising to me that they all kept saying the same thing, that we actually don't pay enough attention to the individuals who are entering this line of work. And that conversation doesn't happen in university unless it's 3 a.m. over pizza and beer, right? And so we wanted to make it happen in a very structured way and bring that really as part of the curriculum. And so what it turns out is that this is actually how adults learn. There's nothing actually new about this. If you look at all the research into the psychology of adult learning, and McKinsey and others have talked about this a lot, adults learn by doing. They learn by talking to role models and getting mentorship from people who walk the path already, and being at the edge of their comfort zone. And that's the other really important thing, is that you learn the most when you're a bit uncomfortable. And so we try to do that. We try to make you uncomfortable, because that's a lot where the learning happens. So places like this, so we take people sometimes out to natural locations and wilderness and make them do nature solos, and use it as a way to reflect on where they want to go, and also realizing how out of tune we are with the natural world and how much it has to teach us. But this was a class on art and leadership, but set out in nature. And I think we're trying to create new kinds of courses and new types of training products that haven't been created, but really are aligned with what the field is looking for. So we have essentially 3 types of programs. One is our flagship, is this 5-month-long certificate program in social innovation management. And it's really what fleshes out each part of our model, the experiential part, the skills part, and the personal development in its deepest bit. So it's incredibly intense. You work almost full time, but you also take 10 short courses, 3 to 4 day courses, and everyone gets a mentor and who will work with you for a year, and also a lot of personal development, and it's very personal. We also do a number of trainings for corporations and large NGOs and so on, as well as individuals. But really what we want to do is work more with universities and really help universities to start to be more aligned. So it's like the kinds of things that are being created here, but to try and bring that more into other types of universities, and not just in the US, but all around the world as well. So our first product in that line, or talking, trying to work with universities, is the summer semester in social entrepreneurship. And we just did our first one this last summer, and we had people from 3 or 4 different countries taking that program, the US and Brazil and India and Ghana, and we had a guy from, was a recent graduate of Howard University, and what we do is similar to the plunge that you guys do in the social enterprise course, but over 2 months, a consulting project with an organization that we backstop, but we walk you through a process of coming up with a solution to an actual organization's problem. And this guy's name was Jabari Smith, and he and their team did so well with this consulting project that he got hired as a COO at the end of the program, and so he ended up staying on in Kenya, and he's working there now. So it's really exciting sort of development that came from it. But what this is right now it's an 8-week program in Nairobi, so we're going to do it again this next summer. So for those of you who are in your first year or graduating and looking for something for the summer, it's in partnership with George Mason University, so you can get academic credit, and we can also explore possibly getting credit through American. And so it consists of, again, all our programs consist of these 3 parts. So there's a consulting experience with a local partner in social entrepreneurship or social change more broadly. There are the 2 to 3 courses, social entrepreneurship, storytelling as a leadership skill, working with local communities and things like that. And then everyone has their own personal development journey that you get some coaching, a lot of peer coaching, and a whole curriculum around understanding who you are and where you want to go and how do you want to get there. So it's that alignment that a lot of elders, in the social change field will talk about, is aligning who you are with the work that you want to do and the world you want to create. And that's trying to get those in alignment is oftentimes the key, I think, to sustainability. Because we talk a lot about financial sustainability, we talk a lot about environmental sustainability. I don't think we talk enough about personal sustainability. And there's, if you worked in development and living in Africa, you're running around, talking to people all the time who work in careers in international development, and everyone's incredibly, I shouldn't say everyone, but there's a lot of cynicism. And there's a lot of very jaded people in this field, and we believe that the way to get around that is to align a bit better between who you are and the work that you want to do. As a way of it's not just makes you happier and makes your work better, but I think it's important for survival actually in this line of work. So we focus a lot on that. So we just closed our first year, and it went really well. And this is our scaling strategy. So getting now into the scaling bit of the conversation. So these are our plans for the next 3 years, and as you'll see, we're trying to replicate a bit because we want to make sure it wasn't a fluke. That we actually, we're going to increase the number of participants, but we're also starting to build partnerships with universities and with corporations and large NGOs and so on to do more in-house training for them. And so it's this theme of consolidating what we've done, but also trying to collaborate more. And so rather than becoming a big, massive entity ourselves, we actually want to work more in partnership with other larger organizations to see how we can help them achieve their missions. And that's how we will achieve ours, essentially. So some of these partnerships, so we work with several types of organizations, both universities and important organizations in the field that both endorse the work programs that we do, but also build partnerships that were extending their own impact. So especially these pipeline partners are organizations that send us people or we send them people for their programs. And so we're starting to build collaborations that will help, rather than trying to consolidate or collect all the talent or create our own programs that everyone comes to. We're really trying to create pipeline partnerships with other organizations doing different types of things that we can then sort of create a mechanism by which people get the types of training they need, whether some of these are undergrad programs, some of them are completely out of the education system, and they're all, though, trying to fill the talent pipeline for the social change sector. But we want to collaborate. We want to make that we all work together rather than compete with each other. And so that's the type of approach that we're bringing to this kind of work. And I think it's not just important that we're not all competing for the same things, but also it's good business actually, so that we're helping each other grow, and that enables all of us to grow and the impact that we want to have. And we're also building partnerships with organizations in the social sector around the world. So we call them employer partners, but it's essentially people who are saying, well, we like what Amani is doing, and we think that that's an important way of educating people for this field. So, people who, if we have open positions and Amani graduates apply for them, will at least guarantee to look at that application with a lot of seriousness. So it saves the organization time and money in finding talent, and it gives our students a bit of a leg up in terms of finding employment after they graduate. So these are some of our students from this last batch. But there's another reason why it's really important to partner, I think, which is that you can't do it all. Like, you just can't. It's the problems are way bigger than any one organization can handle, and any one person certainly. And you need to partner with others, because I'm already, we've just 1 year in, and we're growing really fast, and we're expanding to Brazil, and we're doubling our participants, and I'm already exhausted. I don't even know how this is going to work in 2 continents. So we'll have to figure it out as we go along, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be an interesting journey. But I keep telling everyone I know, after 10 years of working in social entrepreneurship, I thought that I knew what this was about, and I thought I knew what this field was like, and all the traps and all the challenges with it. But until you start doing it yourself, and until you start to try and raise the money yourself, and you have no idea. And it's been a complete lifestyle change, and everything's just changed. And I tell all my friends, don't become a social entrepreneur, whatever you do. It's a terrible idea, unless you absolutely can't not do it. Unless you have this idea that you are absolutely so passionate about that you can't see it not coming into existence. If that's the case, then do it. But because you'll be happier trying. But if not, it's too difficult. That's why it's really important to partner, and it's really important to realize that the impact that you create is going to be limited if you do it by yourself. And if you can work with other people better, there's an indirect impact that is much. And that's why you're doing this, right? You want to make a difference. You want to make a change happen at a level of scale that makes an impact in the world. And so, working with others gets you there much faster. So, have you guys talked about Aflatoon at all in the social enterprise course? No. So, this is one of the biggest social enterprise organizations in the world. It was started by a lady called Juru Bilamoria, who's Indian but lives in the Netherlands. And essentially what they work on is financial literacy for street children and marginalized children of all kinds, so that they learn how to use money and learn how to harness money for as they grow. And so they started they started off, Aflatoon started to work in with children directly. Then they started to create partnerships with other organizations so they call them their affiliates, and they passed on their materials and their training products and all of that. Then they started to network these affiliates so that they could all learn from each other. And then they've created an entire movement now of organizations around the world that are not just the local NGOs and so on that are doing the training directly of the children, but organizations like Citibank and Plan International and UNICEF and all of these other organizations at the ecosystem level that are trying to create a world in which children, particularly marginalized children, can survive, not just survive, but thrive and go on to lead healthy adult lives. And so, they realized really quickly that to get this kind of impact, programs in 44 countries and 600,000 children worldwide, they couldn't do it by themselves, and they had to work with others. So it's a great example of a organization, a social enterprise that has, achieved global impact and is still growing, but not by themselves. They're just one part of a larger system. This starts to get a bit technical, and I don't know if we should talk about it really, but I'll go over quickly. So the first question that you face when you're going to scale is actually, what are you trying to scale, right? It's not obvious. It's not actually an easy question to answer. And I've worked with some of the most well-known social enterprise organizations in the US that could not answer this question, and required sort of a team of consultants and a lot of work with Ashoka through our Globalizer program to even figure out what are we trying to scale. And if you can really hone in on that, you surprise yourself with the types of answers that you come up with. So maybe it's not actually a program. Maybe that's not what you're trying to scale. Maybe it's an idea, right? So take, do you guys know Peace First? Any heard of Peace First? It's a Boston-based organization that trains children in schools to be better at peacemaking. And they find that the schools they work in, the violence levels are down, bullying levels are down, and it's a really successful program. And they started to replicate not just in Boston, but in LA and in San Francisco. And then they were doing really well. They're one of the best-known social enterprises in the US, but they actually felt that they're not interested in more schools. They actually want this idea to spread, that peacemaking is something that's not, for hippies and not singing, kumbaya, but actually it's what Eric Dawson, the founder, said, it's a very muscular thing. It's really difficult, actually, to be a peacemaker, and they want to build that skill in people. And so then they created so rather than setting up more schools, they've created the first ever Nobel Peace Prize for children. And you can, so I think it's an age limit of 15 or 16. So if you're under that, you can apply, and you've got an initiative that you've started, you can apply for this prize, and they've rolled it out in the US, and next year they're going to do it around the world, and they have a bunch of celebrities and all of that, support. But it's all about, actually, we're not about more schools, we're about an idea. So it was a realization that this organization that's 15 years old came to. Through thinking more deeply about this question of what are you trying to scale. So that's really a really important question to answer. And then how do you answer it? How do you identify what you're trying to scale? Some questions to answer. What is your theory of change? So these are more classic business strategy questions. So what's your theory of change? What do you do better than other people do? What's your competitive advantage? What's really yours that nobody else is doing or can do as well as you can do? And so on. And so, these are, as you're starting to think about scale, these are the first sets of questions that you want to wrestle with. And it's not straightforward, actually. It does take some time. So let's take a quick look at, you may have talked about this a bit already, but the difference between scaling a private company that doesn't necessarily have a social impact and scaling in the social enterprise sector. So you see different goals and therefore different ways of achieving it. It's less obvious in social change, but there's a lot more options as well, because you don't have essentially one goal of making a lot of money. Right, you have this goal of spreading social impact, so your basket of opportunities or strategies also widens. On the other hand, there's much less literature around how do you scale up in the social change sector compared to traditional business, and so people were also figuring it out, right? I think I asked Andreas of all the things we do, why did you pick scaling as the topic you want to talk about? And he said it's very relevant, it's very topical, and it's been topical for the last 10 years because nobody's figured it out yet. And so we're all trying to answer this question. An interesting thing when you look at scale, and this is why it's complicated for people, and particularly social entrepreneurs, are control freaks, and I'm realizing more and more that I am too, which I didn't think I was. But when it's your baby, and you really feel it's your baby, it's really hard to let go. But partnership, collaboration, by definition, requires a lot of letting go. It's letting your child sort of step out into the big bad world by herself and seeing what will happen, and trusting that good things will happen. And you brought her up right, and she has the right values, and she's not going to go wrong. And but that's like for parents, that's a difficult thing to go through. And so there is this kind of inverse relationship between the control you can have and the speed at which you scale. And your strategy will reflect that. So not every strategy is for every idea. So some ideas lend themselves better to some different kinds of strategies. But the traditional ways of scaling, so subsidiaries, like you grow your organization, you set up offices in different places. Franchises is also a pretty well-known one. Those give you the most control, but they also are the slowest moving. And the problems we have are much, much bigger. There's urgency, right? You saw what happened in the Philippines last week. 3,000 people affected, killed, and who knows how many affected. We don't have time to figure out a franchise strategy, right? Like, things need to happen now. So, and in that sense, we need to also move quickly. And so there are ways of moving quicker, but they also mean losing a lot of control, and therefore losing potential financial profit, losing quality. That's a big challenge for a lot of social entrepreneurs, and losing credit. And you've worked really hard, you're not sleeping, you've made a lot of sacrifices to this, you may have sacrificed your marriage, and now have to give this up and not get any credit for it. That's really hard. But maybe that's what you need to do. So these are the types of conversations that you need to have with yourself first, and then with your team, with your family, in order to try to figure out. And that's why coming back to Amani and the work we do, that's why the person is so important in this, because this work is inherently personal. It's deeply personal, and if you don't have an understanding or awareness of the importance of the personal nature of this, then you're going to run into a lot of problems. And so so these questions that you face are business strategy questions, but also personal life questions, and holding the two together at the same time is pretty important. So some of you may have seen the Scale Equals Partnership article that we did based on the Globalizer program at Ashoka, and came to kind of these 5 principles that we've learned from looking at the best scaled social enterprises around the world. So firstly, as we talked about, it's about scaling the impact, not the organization. So it's not about you, it's not about your organization, it's about scaling an impact, a social impact. Figure out what you want to scale, codify that, and then you have to adapt it. So keep the things that are most important and let everything else go, or be flexible with how they get interpreted by other organizations. I believe those of you in Stephanie Fisher's class looked at this article on creating a global ecosystem to foster a common standard. So rather than creating an empire, create a standard that everyone else gets measured up to. And that's a way of scaling, because you're scaling an idea, right? So we're seeing increasingly a lot of social entrepreneurs, whether they're working with waste management in Peru, or sustainability in Sweden, or sanitation in Singapore, they're trying to create actually universities or university programs to train more people to do this. And not train the trainers, it's deeper than that. It's actually creating a set of people that can go out to other kinds of work, but take these principles with them. And so it's an interesting strategy that's emerging very organically, but within a number of successful social entrepreneur organizations right now, is actually doing education around what's made them successful to other people, and sometimes in other fields as well. Make it about others. So, again, it's any one person or any one leadership team or board of directors can only do so much. If the ideas are coming as much from the staff, from the other parts of the organization, the more successful, the more sustainable the organization is going to be. So, one of the metrics we used to say at Ashoka is if more ideas are coming from your staff than from you, then you've built the right team. But also, really importantly, externally, keeping, as you network around your idea and around your impact, that you're not at the center, but the end goal is at the center. So as you saw with Aflatoon, it wasn't Aflatoon's growth that they were after, but it was this mission of, hundreds of millions of children around the world being able to be financially literate. And if you put that in the center, it's a completely different scaling strategy than if you're trying to grow your own organization. This other thing we sort of tongue-in-cheek say, appoint the evangelist in chief, which is the person who's going to represent the idea. So, and that's oftentimes the founder. Not always. Sometimes founders, Ashoka is a great example. Founders, aren't the best public speakers and shouldn't be anywhere near a microphone. But somebody needs to, and somebody needs to be, make the TED Talk and. Do the webinars and write the op-eds and be the face of an idea and help it spread and get other people, to be involved. And so you need to, if it's not the founder, it needs to be someone else in the leadership team. And so that's another important thing we see about, spreading your impact, spreading your ideas, not spreading your own organization. So I'll end with one more really interesting example. That's Cicely Saunders in the hospice care movement. Here was a nurse, and she created a hospice in St. Christophers in South London, and that was the first hospice ever created. But they never expanded that institution, didn't grow. There weren't St. Christophers popping up all over the UK and then spreading around the world. They just became a center of excellence. And they focused on being the best hospice, St. Christophers, they could be. And then she started to speak at Yale and other places and brought the idea there. And then the dean of the School of Nursing at Yale said, we need this in America too, and I'm going to do it. And so then he went and interned. This is the dean of the School of Nursing. Went to intern with her in London and came back and started the first hospice in America. And then it grew, and now it's, obviously all around the country, all around the world. But the first ever hospice didn't go beyond its own doors, and it still exists in London. Still very good. Still a center of innovation and education and research. But they've created something now that is, so sort of well entrenched around the world. And so that's another sort of really interesting example of how you could grow and scale an idea without becoming a massive empire yourself. So let me end with that. I have several other examples of this as well, but I think I'm talked too long, so I'll stop. And
I actually have a question, because when you worked in Ashoka for such a long time, but after that you decided to create your own organization. So do you think that's the best way to create impact in terms of starting something from scratch? And have you ever run into a dilemma where you have to kind of make a decision whether the past organization, which is the Amani Institute, and now have you tried to incorporate the practice into Ashoka, or I'm just kind of curious to see your answer.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it's madness to start your own organization. Don't ever do it. No, I think it's, we thought about doing it at Ashoka, but it just didn't work with Ashoka's, where Ashoka wanted to go. And what Ashoka's core competency is, it's not in service delivery. It's not in training. It's in building an ecosystem around an idea. And, what I say is that Ashoka is creating this world of fostering an ecosystem of change makers, but they're not actually teaching people how to be change makers. And that's what we want to do. So that's what we set out to do. So it didn't work with Ashoka's model to do this in-house. So we said, let's do it on our own. But Ashoka is not the only person that we work with or that we want to work with either. So there are many types of partnerships that we're building and trying to create, again, an ecosystem around training people. And that also fits really nicely with the sort of innovative models in education that a lot of people are trying to build and create, and at all levels, from high school to undergrad, grad school, and outside grad school, and so on. And so there's a zeitgeist of changing education right now that we're tapping into, and it's really interesting to be part of that conversation as well. So in that sense, if I'd stayed at Ashoka, we may not have been part of that dialogue. That's really interesting to be part of as well. Lena?
I just wanted to ask you, you mentioned you also work with companies and NGOs. Could you explain
Mm-hmm.
what you offer?
Yeah, so a lot of organizations are starting to come to us and say, well, we could send a student for a semester for one of your courses, but we'd actually rather have you come to us and train our staff in storytelling, social innovation, social entrepreneurship, design thinking, and so on. So we're starting to get a lot of requests from organizations to do in-house trainings for them. So that's something we also do increasingly as well. And it's coming from Europe, US, and mostly East Africa, but also Europe and the US. And we're going to do we're going to possibly do one with a business school in Brazil in a couple of weeks, actually. So it's just growing by itself in a way that we don't fully understand yet, but we're enjoying it. Prerna?
Yeah, so I work with Search for Common Ground, and I was wondering, how do you all incorporate or work with youth and children, or just youth who are coming from like a comfort zone background, and they have other social, psychological, traumatic issues to deal with. So how do you cater to that plus teach them things that they can go back to that comfort zone and incorporate and start a venture?
So we're not working with youth in that sense, right? We're working on education, but like it's more at an infrastructure level. So talent so what we're really focusing on is talent for the social sector. So how do people who want to do this work in the long term, how do they get jobs? How do they build their skills to be effective? And in that process, increase the impact of their organizations to be more successful. So we do work in communities, but it tends to be kind of as a place where our students can start to learn a bit about the difficulties and complexities of working in local communities, and not directly with the communities themselves. It's not that we won't do it, but yeah, yeah, it's possible that we could do something like that for sure. Yeah, we can go around. Yeah. So Nairobi is a number of reasons. I think on the business side, it's this great center for innovation. I mean, Nairobi today is I think what Bangalore was 10 years ago and Shanghai was 10 years before that. It's a place where you can actually see the middle class rising, and you can there's like a country on the rise in front of your eyes, and that transformation is really interesting to be part of and exciting to be around. And it's matched by this social innovation kind of laboratory kind of feeling that everybody with a smart idea is moving to Kenya these days, like they did to India 10 years ago. And so there is a lot of really interesting innovative things happening in Nairobi, and again, so we wanted to be part of that. We also wanted to be in a place that was English speaking, and therefore we could have a global program, a beautiful country that people want to go to, and Kenya is absolutely magical in that sense. But I think also it's a hub, right? And there's 2 or 3 of the UN departments have their global headquarters in Nairobi, UNEP, UN Habitat, and one more, and every major NGO has a office there. So there's a lot of room for partnerships. So we wouldn't have to focus on just one field, and we could, if your interest was in education and yours was in human rights and yours was in healthcare, we could, have you all find placements and organizations you'd want to work in. So had a great flexibility in that sense. But there's also a more personal side to it, or more kind of a living your values thing, because my co-founder's from Argentina and I'm from India, and it would have been easier for us to do it in either one of those places. But the other thing we really believe is that you've got to get out of your comfort zone in order to grow, and we wanted to create problems, boundary crossers, as that quote said, and train people to be able to cross boundaries in their work. And so we felt it was important for us to live that, and if we're preaching courage and stepping out of your comfort zones, let's do it too. So that's why we picked Africa, and then once you pick Africa, Nairobi jumps to the top for all those reasons. Brazil is sort of the Nairobi of Latin America, essentially. I mean, Sao Paulo, not even Brazil, and it's not Kenya, it's Nairobi, right? And it's not Brazil, it's Sao Paulo, and we see it as sort of the Nairobi of Latin America, for all the same things. The language is going to be more of a challenge there, so we're going to have to figure that, but we're going to keep it in English, everything. And for your placements, we're going to have to figure that out with the Portuguese, so still in, but yeah, so I think that's it. The goal is to have then also campus in India down the road, and so have East Africa, South Latin America, and South Asia as our three kind of like programs that we want to have.
Back to the kind of scaling of the Amani Institute. How are you guys feeling about finding professors who double in size multiple times?
Yeah.
For 3 years. How's that process been, and being able to find kind of people that you're looking for? Social enterprise is not like this massive field, it's really narrow.
Yeah.
To pull from, and kind of just how it's happening for you guys, and outside especially other areas where scaling the university or institute.
Yeah.
Might have come up that way.
Yeah. It's really easy to find professors. And it's because actually we're not looking for professors. We're looking for practitioners, like experts in the field. And we're really explicitly not looking for academics because they have a world in which they exist. And if you wanted, for that type of training, you've got universities. And so we're really looking to do something that's complementary to universities, and therefore different as well. And so we find people who really, it turns out that the more advanced you are in your field, the closer to the top of your field you are, the more you actually want to give back and mentor and train the next generation. But you don't necessarily, want to go and work in a university. You want to keep your job and stay in it and so on. But for you, it's a joy to give back. And so we offer people the opportunity to actually, we frame it as us doing them a favor. And they get an opportunity to come to Kenya and work with a group of next generation leaders in the field and share their knowledge and wisdom and expertise. And for them, it's a joy, and we don't even pay them. And we cover their costs, but they're not going out of pocket for it. But for them, they get to come to Kenya and talk about what they love. So it's a pleasure. I think you had your hand up first, or no? Okay.
Could you talk about your decision to use the particular avenue of scaling up that you did, which was the franchise model, and kind of why you think that is the best way to scale your impact?
So it's not a franchise model. It's at this point it's sort of two things. It's both a traditional expansion model, so you're starting the same program or the same product in other countries or in other places, but also a partnership-based thing where we're working with a number of organizations to train their staff and so on. It just made the most sense sort of financially for us, as well as in trying to. So while it's really important to start to partner, it's also to gain that credibility. I think you need to have the not just the credibility, but also the ability to understand what you're doing really well and codify that and then share it with others, to have a bit of more of a track record and grow your organization to a certain size so that you can actually start to spread it. And I think that's one of the things I also learned about scale, is that before you partner, you've got to build your organization out a bit. And so that's where we are now. And so we don't want to then be all around the world. Our hope is that we're only going to be in those three countries, and then really be a center of excellence and have other people come to us and share the model, and then maybe somebody wants to start a Amani Institute, Johannesburg or Bangkok, then we'd have to figure out the franchise at that point. But and I imagine we'll get there. But at this moment, we're still consolidating. We're still trying to see if the great year we had was the right one. Yeah.
I love the education model. I was wondering, how do you guys intertwine theoretical education and the practical aspect of it in things such as economics and things like that
Yeah.
you're teaching your students?
So we have a line that the longest paper you'll ever write at the Amani Institute is 1 page, and it's because we're really interested in the critical thinking and all of that, but we actually think that deliverables shouldn't be about in the field. It's not so much about writing long things. It's actually about presentations, public speaking, working in teams, and deliverables. So we do not that much in terms of writing, but a lot of snap presentations, and if you've done have you done the design thinking one, or is that coming up? You've done it? Saturday. So you'll see it's a lot about trying things out and failing, and then building again, reiterating again how adults learn. There's a cycle of adult learning that sort of you learn it, you try it, you fail, or you see what you learn from it, and then you improve. And so we do a lot of that along the way, and so that for us is sort of where the theory of adult learning that we're trying to apply in it. And then, sure, there's readings and there's reflection papers and academic papers, but they're oftentimes in the form of memos to heads of organizations. So we're really trying to build out that really professional. We have a course on professional writing. We have a course on public speaking as part of the program. So we train people to do that. But it's really, again, it's trying to be complementary to what the universities are doing. So, and it's designed for people who want to work in the field or professionally in the sector, and less so for the academics who, for them, traditional university is great, right? They do that really well. But we're really focused on practitioners in the field.
I'm interested in two things. Can you talk a bit about how you identify your partners on the ground that you're working with? And if there's a space for individuals on the ground to identify you and ask to be a part of that. And also, can you talk about any pathways that you have for leaders in these marginalized communities to actually be a part of this university, or is this largely for outsiders to be working with problems?
Yeah. So the first question was, how do you identify partners on the ground? A mix of, we approach people that we would like to work with, and we figure out, what would make them want to work with us. And sometimes people come to us and say, hey, we hear you're offering this, can we participate? So it's word of mouth, it's a little bit of marketing, it's a bit of direct kind of approaching organizations. And there's no science behind it. A lot of it is opportunism and serendipity and organic kind of growth. What was the second part to that first question?
No, that was great. I'm curious about if there are pathways that you have for these leaders within these marginalized communities to actually be a part of this training and this leadership. Yeah. What does that look like? Yeah, so it's really important to us to have diversity in who we have. So our last class for the 5-month program was 40% Kenyan. And 60% people from other countries. And of the 40% Kenyan, 2 of them were people who grew up in slums. They were doing really interesting things with their lives, but they didn't have a formal education, and they sometimes, so on the more theory or intellectual side, they struggled. Whereas and there was a lady who was running a school in a slum for the last 20 years, and she was 45, and then you've got the 22-year-old recent graduate from a top university who is intimidating her because of his intellectual ability, but life experience. She's absolutely amazing in what she's pulled off in her life, and so we put all of that in the mix together, actually. So the diversity it's not just geographic, and it's life experience. So the youngest student we had was 22 and the oldest was 45. It was people who grew up in the suburbs of Paris and people who grew up in slums in Kenya, people from consulting backgrounds and people from community NGOs. And so but we work with everybody on an individual basis so that every person can go to the next level, no matter what that is. And so I think if you have that orientation, and then you could have very different people in the room, and try and make it possible for them. And so, sometimes the foundation will pay for someone to come into the program. Sometimes we offer scholarships to people so we try and raise some scholarship funding ourselves and try and offer scholarships to some people, particularly those from marginalized backgrounds.
What's the fee structure? How much are we talking about for the course?
So it's for the 5-month program. It's $6,000 if you're Kenyan and $8,000 if you're not from Kenya. For the summer program, it's $4,000 or $3,900. If you want credit, there's another 25% on top of that, but not everybody wants the academic.
I'm curious how, in your work with Ashoka, if just being around all these social entrepreneurs sort of influenced the skills that you thought needed to be taught in the field, or if you're more like training skills for social change to complement the social entrepreneurs. Are you sort of looking for the entrepreneurial type, or is it more like the skills?
It's a great question. We're really interested in entrepreneurs, and about a third of our students tend to be entrepreneurs or starting their own things. But we didn't start this for entrepreneurs. Like, there's enough fellowships and incubator programs for entrepreneurs. But as I said, like, the challenge for entrepreneurs is that who comes next, right? And how do you build out a team and a staff that can actually grow and scale your organization? And that's who we're really interested in. So we're really interested in the staff of entrepreneurs organizations. But I think I should also be, we're not only working with entrepreneurs and not only working in social entrepreneurship, we're working with everybody who is in social change. So it could be a school in a slum, it could be a community NGO, it could be a corporation that wants to have a social impact. It could be a large NGO. So, we're really that whole spectrum of people trying to make the world better. Like, that's our market. And social entrepreneurs is one part of it. Sure, we have a lot of expertise and background in that, and so that's a big part of what we do, and that's who we attract. But it's not, like, that's not our world. Our world is, like, the whole social sector.
Right.
But you're right in that a lot of it came from watching Ashoka Fellows and seeing what made them successful, and trying to see the ones we most admired, what were the qualities that made these people the special kind of individuals that they were, and can we foster that in others as well. And so we have these 4 values that you may have seen in the video: vision, courage, empathy, and change making. And if you go to our site, there's very specific definitions for each of them and examples of people who, and that that's kind of one of the frameworks of our curriculum is trying to foster these four values. And I think we crystallized that from the Ashoka Fellows we saw, the ones that we liked, we admired the most and were having a great impact. We felt they really embodied these values. Yeah. So it's very values oriented, our work as well.
I work in an organization and we partner with different microfinance institutions, and some of our partnerships have been more successful than others. And I was wondering if you have anything you can share, any lessons from insights about picking a good organization or just any surprises in
I'm trying to think what I can say that is not based on kind of 10 years of experience of picking good organizations, because now it's become a lot of like intuition and it's based on a lot of experience and so on. But I think oftentimes it's really important to look at who are the people running it and where are they coming from, not geographically but values-wise. Like, who are these people as people, and where are they coming from, and what's their true intention with it? And I think, the business side of things comes next. It's important, and you've got to pay attention to it, but it's the second question. The first question is, why are you doing this? Like, deeply, why are you doing this? And I think those who've answered that question well, that's who we want to work with, because I think there's a deeper sense of, why that helps you adapt and persist through the challenges that you face. So when things go wrong, as they will, how do you survive that? And I think those who are more centered in why they're doing this have a better ability to survive the setbacks. And so at the end of the day, it's not some succeed and others fail. It's like everybody's really struggling, but some people know how to make it better. And I think that's who you want to work with as such. So maybe that's a bit of a mystical answer to your question, but that's sort of what I think I've learned. It's really important to look at who are the people involved in it. Okay.
Sorry, I just want to dig a little bit deeper on the actual curriculum and sort of the skills that you're teaching. We recently did a class on incubators and accelerators and talked to some people in the field and asked some questions about the gaps that exist in terms of these organizations. And one of the big answers that we got back was a lot of organizations are missing people with technical skills, particularly in finance and things like that. So are you addressing the technical skills aspect on a module by module basis, or are you teaching the folks about sort of the spirit of working within the sector of social enterprise and sort of the values that they need to embody? Clarify a little bit, understand.
So we did a survey before we started, and you can see this study on our website, where we surveyed 50 plus organizations working in social change across the spectrum, so humanitarian agencies, social enterprises, foundations, think tanks, and so on. And we asked them, we're trying to understand what is it that you're looking for in an employee, and what is it that what it makes a good employee and what makes a bad employee. And almost uniformly, and I bet you if we got 5 CEOs in here that work in completely different fields, and we asked them the same question, because I've polled several people outside of our study as well, the answers are really consistent. It's when you get a set of answers, you get essentially personality traits. You don't get skills. You get leadership, positive attitudes, optimistic about change, problem solver, things like that. The one thing that's more, somewhat in the skills category that you get almost always is communication. So, and that's not just, sort of, there's the technical side, so social media, blah, blah, but also, nonviolent communication, working across cultures, public speaking, storytelling, things like that. So that's the closest that we identified to something that's in the skill bracket was communication. And what makes a bad employee is the opposite of all of those. So, cynical, complaining all the time, comes up with problems, not solutions. Those are the things that employers hate. And so what became really important was that it was, so as important, again, why we work on the person as much, because what people say that they're looking for is really different. We asked, actually, so we had a list of things that they're looking for. At the bottom of that list, take one guess.
Money.
Fundraising. Nobody cares. Really, that you can fundraise. Yeah, it's okay. It's nice, but it's not what they're actually looking for. They're that thing they can train. Languages, another great sort of sacred cow of a lot of education, programs. You've got to study a language. We live in a world where English is the global language. So, the language of business almost everywhere is English. So, if you don't speak English, you should learn English. But that's another one that employers around the world didn't really care that much about. Analytical skills also. Analytical skills were a bit higher. Sort of theory and research were also not that high. But on the top, leadership, problem-solving ability, communication, working across cultures, those were all really what people said. So we do a bunch of really practical skill-based stuff, so around communication in particular. So professional writing, public speaking, storytelling, things like that. We also do design thinking and social entrepreneurship and management, that kind of stuff as well. The really, we're going to do, probably because there was a bit of a request from this year's group of students around finance, so we're going to address some of that kind of stuff, but it's reading a balance sheet and profit and loss statements and things like that. We're going to look at some of that next year, a bit more than we did this last year. But I think that'll be it. I think every field will have its own technical skills. So healthcare will have its own set of technical skills, as will education and the environment and energy and so on. And that we can't cater to everybody's thing. So we focus more generally on leadership management, values, and being a good agent of change. Yeah.
I have time, so I'm happy to have you.
Well, I was just wondering, because I'm obviously out looking for jobs, and many of our public starting recruiters, it just strikes me that there's also a disconnect in what employers advertise that they're looking for. So maybe some training on like how to write a good job description.
Yeah.
Because they dig really deep into a lot of technical things, and I think a lot of us sitting around the table are like, well, I have learned all of these things through the social enterprise program that you're talking about, and I feel like I have a lot of those skills. What I don't have is deep experience in financial modeling or fundraising in X, Y, and Z. Therefore, or I don't speak fluent Portuguese. I'm not qualified to go work in Brazil for a social enterprise. And a lot of them are really like outlining those things, and I think a lot of us are writing ourselves off of the I'm a candidate for this position because we don't possess X, Y, or Z. So do you have any comments on that?
I'm sorry. You have that experience.
No, you are very encouraging. I'm like, cool, you know. But
No, I mean, I think, increasingly, I think there are certainly, I think there's a difference oftentimes between the CEO and the HR person. And I think the HR person's more the the bureaucrat or the sort of the technical person who's trying to weed out people and then pick the top 5 that then will get interviewed by the CEO. And I think there's a limit station in thinking that will say that we need to weed out some people, so let's look at some technical things and so on. The ultimate decisions get made on emotion, and there's a lot of research around this. Gut feel, do they like you? Like ultimately, it's whether they like you or not. And so, being able to be the type of person that will be, someone who can project that. You'll be able to be a team player, you have a positive attitude and all of that. I think perhaps the hard part is getting to that group of 5, right? And I think there are ways in which you can do that make you stand out. So, there was this summer intern that Ashoka had about 4 or 5 years ago, and she was a junior in college, and she led a process where all the summer interns together came up with an animated video to explain what Ashoka does. And it was something that Ashoka is a very complex organization, and it's hard to explain, it's hard to understand, even for those who work there. And this group of summer interns came up with this beautiful 2-minute animated video of what Ashoka is. And Ashoka didn't need it, like nobody told her to do it. Ashoka didn't know they needed it. But when they did it, and Ashoka realized, wow, we really need this. And till today, I've spoken about Ashoka all around the world, and I use that video in every talk. And I know the president of Ashoka uses it in fundraising in Silicon Valley, and this is a 2-minute animated video made by a junior in college. Obviously, she got hired the minute she graduated. So I think the challenge oftentimes also that a lot of people finishing university, if I can be a bit candid, think is that, oh, I got this degree, I should get a job now. And it's actually not that simple, and it's not that straightforward. I think you've got to make yourself someone who they want to hire, and maybe it's volunteering for a while until you prove yourself. Maybe it's taking a couple of risks to do something that they didn't know they wanted until you make it happen. I think those are some of the things that make people stand out. When I had this idea for what has now become Amani, and I was approached by this person I barely knew. We had some mutual friends, and she said, I want to work with you on this. And I said, yeah, right, sure, and didn't take it seriously. And she said, no, really. And every time I saw her in the next 3 months, we'd go, common friends, and we'd go to movies together and so on. She would always ask me, so what can I do to help? And so finally I was like, maybe she's serious. And so I said, well, I'm trying to do this research around, peace building programs and how effective they are in getting people jobs and so on, and would you like to look at what universities are doing? So she said yes, and she not only did it, she used her own money to pay for a research product that was available but behind a paywall, and refused to have me reimburse her for it. And then when I said I was going to Rwanda to look at the possibility, she said, I'm going to come. And I said, I can't afford to bring you to Rwanda. She said, you're not paying me. You're not paying for it. I'm paying for it. And so, the first 6 months it was my idea, but now we're 3 years in, and she's equally a co-founder, and she proved, in more ways than one, and she put skin in the game, literally. To use that American expression that I'm realizing I've started to catch myself in other countries when I'm using Americanisms. Now I'm in America, so I can use it. So that made her come on board, and likewise, like our first staff member came from Berlin to Nairobi as a volunteer for 6 months. You know, we didn't pay her a cent, we didn't pay her a plane ticket, you know, and she came from love and passion for this idea, and she obviously became the first person we put on salary before we put ourselves on salary, and so she was there for 6 months, and then now she's on staff, and she's, you know, we've extended her contract for another year. And so I think, and this is why I think we've got to bring education and the field a lot closer together, right? So that people have a chance to prove their skills, to prove what they can do. And this divorce that we have right now, and I'm speaking generally, not specifically, but this divorce of, like, you know, you study, and then you get a stamp, and then you apply for a job, and then you get a job. That is, like, nobody gets a job that way, right? Like, you get a job through networking. So you've got to go to things and get to know people, but you've got to prove yourself, and you've got to help other people. You know, a lot of sort of world-class networkers will tell you that the best thing you can do to network is to help as many people as you can. Like, that's networking. Networking isn't going to people and seeing what they can do for you. It's about what you can do for other people. So, you know, the more you can do that, like, the more serendipity comes your way, and the more opportunities come your way. And it's not about applying for a job and getting an interview. It's about getting asked to apply for that job. And so how do you make it? So here's the question I'll leave you with, and I'm passionate about this question you asked me. I really can go on for like another hour. But here's my thought to leave you with, is to ask yourself, the question is, when next time you're in that place and they're saying, you don't speak Portuguese, or you don't, you're not a fundraiser, say, what can I do to have you want me to apply for this? That you asked me to apply for this. If you can answer that question, and the answer to that question is kind of like the answer to the what are you trying to scale question. It'll take you into surprising new areas and new territories that should be fun and should be part of the journey of discovery, self-discovery as well. So maybe that's a place to end. Oh.
Sorry, I just have to ask about language, because
yeah.
Having lived all over the world and worked in a lot of places at different levels in society and everything, I was very puzzled that you said, and then I said there's an age thing, but I was very puzzled when you said everybody speaks English. But it's not just speaking English. When you speak in another language, you learn about different ways of thinking about the same thing, and you miss out on that if you don't speak the language. So I go around telling everybody they have to speak another language in addition to English.
Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up on that. Now,
sure.
Do you think it's not necessary?
Yeah, let me distinguish between, I think it's wonderful to learn languages and speak all kinds of languages, and I think, as you said, there's so much. It's such a key part of the fabric of culture to know a language and to speak different. You know, to be able to communicate in a local language gives you a completely different experience than only being able to communicate in one language. What I was meaning was, as a professional skill, to get hired in an organization, it's something that's overstated. That you need to learn languages in order to be a more attractive employee candidate. You don't. I mean, the language of business in most places is English, and the places it's not, it's becoming English anyway. And particularly, and the main reason is that work is global today, and people are living all around the world and working in other places, and you know, flying around and so on. And so everyone's having to learn to communicate, and you know, it tends to be in English a lot if you want to be able to rise up and move to higher and higher levels of your organization. So as a professional skill, I think you know, you need to speak at least some English to be able to work with people from across cultures. As a person, as an operator in the world, as a human being, I think languages are amazing, and one should learn them, and if you can make the effort to do that, it enriches your life in a lot of ways. But I think there's a distinction that I was trying to make. So.
I'm sure Roshan will be around a little bit if anyone has any more questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. I know it's late, so thanks for staying this long. Yeah. I have some cards here if anybody wants to take, and I'm happy to follow up over email.